everybody. Um, so I thought I'd start out, you had a handful of questions and I just kind of doodled some thoughts to kick it off. But just to explain a little bit about me too, you heard my bio, but a big part of my story is that I grew up outside of Philadelphia and then I came here to Asheville to UNCA for college. So I'm at the point where now more than half of my life I've lived basically in Asheville, a couple other cities for jobs. I love this town. I love it so much. And we have so many problems, but so much beautiful stuff. And so service to and support of the community has just been a big part of who I am for a long time. And it really started here. So I did an environmental studies degree. I focused on policy management economics. And then as Ellen mentioned, I just had this opportunity to intern with a city council person in Asheville when I was an undergrad. And it just really showed me this venue to be a change maker. And I think I've always kind of known that do-goodery would be part of my life. I had two big sisters and they went off to college before me. And I early learned I'm gonna have to make money the rest of my life. Okay, and that usually can be kind of soul sucking. So is there a way that I can game it where I can make money in service to things that are really important to me and I care about? And climate has continued to be something that's really important to me, but the older I get, climate isn't separate than housing, which isn't separate than poverty alleviation. It all starts to really mingle. And I think a city is a perfect laboratory for where all of this mingles, because it's where people and the planet collide. So the first question y'all had is what was my first interest in government? And I think it probably would have been when I was here. I ended up co-chairing the Active Students for a Healthy Environment, ASH. It's an environmental club around UNCA. And we hosted a candidate forum. And it wasn't my idea. It was just a legacy that that's what people had done before. And so when I co-chaired, it was oh, okay, I'm going to have to organize this. And so I started organizing a forum. And so, some of that was emailing elected officials, and then we helped facilitate the questions. And afterwards, I just went up to one of them. His name's Brownie Newman. He's now the current county commission chair in Buncombe County. And he just was so passionate and knowledgeable about environmental policy. And I was can I do something to help you? And we just invented an internship. And it gave me this insight into government can be accessible. Federal government honestly still feels really removed to me. Sometimes I still feel pretty powerless about how to impact things I don't like at the federal level, but local government, you could call anyone on city council and get lunch with us. We're still a small town. And so having this, again, this laboratory where I could be part of policy, making better rules so that we're healthier and happier was just very inspiring. And I started that at UNCA. And then a couple years after I graduated, the city had set a carbon reduction policy. It was the first in the South to do that in 2008. And they put out a position for a full-time employee, and I applied and got that job. And so then I worked as a city staffer, as an employee running a climate change, building and founding a climate change program. And I did that for 7 years in City Hall. And that was my first real grown-up job. And I really cut my teeth on how do we take just very ambitious and beautiful, ideal goals and get real about it. And the get real is where it's hard, especially in Southern Appalachia, especially in a small city, especially in political context of Democrat, Republican at the state level, et cetera. So that is some of where my first interest came. The other thing I want to say is for a long time I've had this personal mission statement. I'm going to draw it. And it came about around that time when I was interning with Brownie and then when I was starting the sustainability department, where I was just interacting with so many different people trying to make a change. And there's like the object, right, that you're trying to move in the world, and then there's the fulcrum, the tipping point, and then there's the lever. And so just early on, like I would be involved in activist work here in Asheville, and I felt like they weren't even on the map sometimes. And I was like, I get that, I believe it, but like, how are we gonna like nudge this thing? Like, what's the strategy? Or how are we building power so we have a big enough voice? Or what's the like all these questions. And to me, being inside the belly of the beast, being inside of those institutions works with some of my gifts. It's really important to have people outside of the machine. We need every seat on the change bus full. But for me and kind of my gifts, playing with this lever to be as most impactful as I could. And I found that leading a department at the city was a part of that. And I found that government, to me, is a big part of that. I think knowing I was going to be involved in do-goodery somehow, I could be a researcher and help us understand what needs to happen. I could have been an advocate or an activist, or just sinking into being a mom and what that meant to raise a kid. Like, there's a lot of ways to do this, but for me, that lever point, local government really fits. And that's going to be different for everybody. But I think that really started solidifying early, that then when I actually left City Hall and started my consulting business, now I work with national and international nonprofits. I really missed like actually making change at my home. And that's ultimately why I ran for office like 2 years ago and started this. Like, I still run my consulting business. City council is a part-time job. But for me, I really missed like doing something that made my neighbors' lives better, or trying to do something that makes my neighbors' lives better. So that was kind of my first, the first question that y'all put out there. I'd be curious to hear from y'all, like, as you're going through this class, which is looking at a bunch of these different things, and kind of the government lens or the politics lens is just one part of it. Like, what do y'all think about local government as a laboratory for change? Is it something that anyone's participated in stuff around the city or around the county? Is it something that y'all feel like is a place where you see yourselves?
I think I used to want to run for Congress, but then I took a Congress class. But I feel like what you said, it's more accessible to try to do local things, and you probably have a greater chance of actually seeing any type of change that you want to, because I feel like it's just a lot easier. There's not any big things going on. You're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a train run.
Mm-hmm. What was it in the class that crystallized that I don't want to be in that space?
I was already thinking about it and then we talked about finances mainly. How it's borderline impossible for a regular person to even try to get that far. Because I was thinking about like you would start off in local government, state government, and then eventually try to move up, which I think is what Chuck Edwards did.
Sometimes people do that, yeah.
But you still have to get to that point of having enough money to do that and all of that. And local government or federal government's just so messy. And people are really immature. Yeah, I don't know.
It's important work. If it's your calling, do it. Race towards it. It wasn't mine. But yeah. Yeah, I get that.
I did like work with Edison Research, so part of that was going down to like the Board of Elections and watching them certify the votes and then get the first like vote tallies, and that was like such a, oh my gosh, this is how our system works moment, because it's like you hear about all this stuff happening but you don't really like see it, even though they live stream it too.
Yeah.
But it was just like being there was super cool because it was like, okay, this is how it works. Like, it's not as understandable as people make it out to be, that like only certain people who are really, really smart can be in government office. Like, you can just be in anybody who can do it. So I don't know, I'm interested in local government.
Yeah, it's a cool space.
I like what do they call it? I worked in the election last year, like
cool.
As and I'm not from around here. I'm small town in New Jersey, like very different than probably local government around here. But it was literally like the volunteers were like the parents of kids I went to school with, and like the people that were actually running everything was like my neighbors and like people that I knew when I was in class. Really like at the very, very base of it, it's like literally just my community running itself, basically. And I think local government is overlooked a lot. I think people look at things at a grander scale and think that like it's impossible to get certain things done because that scale is so big, but like it's literally like your neighbors, people that you know that you can talk to and make some change.
Yeah. It's pretty magical. Like really cheesy, but.
Yeah, I've looked into the Guardian Ad Litem program here for the courts in the area. I've looked at that. I'm considering doing that. But that's probably the closest that I think psychology really gets to touching the law a lot of the time.
I was just gonna say, I come from like a town near Charlotte, but I remember, I think it was in middle school or maybe my freshman year of high school, we got a new mayor and it was all the campaigning around that and everything. And one of the candidates who ended up winning, is our mayor now, was like the mother of one of the kids in my grade that like I sat next to in science class, and I was like, this feels a little weird. But yeah.
It's just like regular people. It's just like now I'm serving on city council, and before that, I just did that. Like it's just, and I think that's different than Congress and Senate, and that's fine. But it's just like the barrier to entry is low. The payoff is potentially so big because it's where you live. It's your home. The other thing I think is interesting as we're talking about a little of the comparisons between levels of government, and I spent time really thinking about this when my husband and I decided that I was going to run, is what do you want to change? What are you passionate about? And I think having worked in city government, I really kind of was clear on kind of like the job description, if you will. And so I really am passionate about affordable housing. I'm very passionate about multimodal transportation and land use planning. And that is like local government job, right? But if I was really care about like access to healthcare, that's a big conversation in state policy. Or if I was really, really interested in education reform, that's a state play. And so that's some of it too, is, you know, sometimes you're just called to a place and the arena for making those decisions is local or elsewhere, or maybe the school board. That's a very local race that people are very passionate about. But for me, it all kind of lined up of service to my community, building power in my community, and I love like the job, like what we're supposed to do really matched with my passions also. Any other thought? I'm going to go on the next one. What is it like running for office? So it sounds like some folks have like volunteered at things or been at candidate or like polling, volunteering or canvassing. I'll kind of say, here's like the process that I went through. Like, was starting to think that I was gonna do this, but I say we because it's a family affair. It took a lot of time, and I run a business full time. So this is like extracurricular, essentially. And I started by interviewing people all over town. I had a big network because I've been in Asheville for 20 plus years, but I set to have 100 interviews with people from north, south, east, west, across genders, across races, across sexualities, to just be like, what do you think is important? What are you worried about? And so before I even set kind of my platform and my priorities and put myself, like dug into where I want to lead, I just like asked everybody and then used that listening to distill where I felt like the greatest need was. And so that was, you know, right when I was starting to run. And then I took all that information to really distill what my platform would be, which was a very strategic process that I worked on with my campaign manager, who was a volunteer, just like regular old Ashevillean who does ski patrol at Cataloochee, just like another neighbor. And then when it got into actual campaign season, the best thing I can articulate is it was like a marathon. I don't know if anyone's done long distance races, but like it wasn't hard because ultimately I had to like memorize a 90-second speech, a 2-minute speech, and I had to like I just had to have the endurance to talk to like 50 people a day and actually listen. And I had to have the endurance to like skip dinner because I went to 3 events that night. It just felt like a race. And I probably did overkill. I don't know that I needed to do it as much as I did, but I kind of am the person who's like, I'm giving it everything so that I don't walk away being like, I could have done more. So that was a lot of kind of what the race felt like. And what it looks like after you set your strategy is like knocking on doors. Door knocking is the #1 vote converting activity. It just takes a lot of time. But I love talking to people and I love walking around neighborhoods. So I did way more door knocking than many, but it's also a really successful strategy and I learned a lot. It looks like going to candidate forums. It looks like I came to the Sunrise meeting here at UNC Asheville, going to community meetings, community events. It did look like raising money. I raised around $30,000, all from local donors. And then, I came to UNCA and did the shuttle to the polls that the UNCA Dems organized. What I'd say about running, though, is the hardest part. I talked about like the endurance and learning like what's this playbook even going to look like was stressful to figure out, but once I got a campaign manager, she kind of knew that playbook. The hardest part was like the mental and emotional part of it. The like waking up every day and being like, I have something to offer here. And that's still like a daily like, who are you, girl? And like hopefully that goes away one day, maybe not, but like the confidence. And I had a friend early on who was a former city councilor, and I was saying like, I don't know if I'll be able to endure doing this job because of just like really wrestling with confidence. And he said, the #1 way to build confidence is courage. And so that's just something that I've had written on my dry erase board and I spend time thinking about because this world is not going to get better unless a lot of us are really brave. So that was, I guess, not surprising, but I feel like particularly in this conversation of like women, gender, sexuality, like there's so many male politicians and I've never heard anyone be like, it was scary to be confident. And like, that is the real, right? It was scary to like spend so much time away from my kid, So there's a lot about the emotional journey and the emotional resilience and it's almost like when you're doing a marathon, you have to build your muscle so that the muscle of like, I can do this, I'm worthy, I have something to say, was pretty powerful and empowering and pretty cool, but super duper hard. So those are some of my thoughts on what it's like running for office. I know that like all these are questions y'all generated. When y'all generated that question, like what did you want to talk about? What did you want to hear about? Like what comes up for you after you hear what I rambled about and what you wanted to get into? What do you think about when you think about this question?
How long, like when did you start your campaign until like the voting day or whatever? How long were you campaigning?
I am an overachiever, as I mentioned. So my campaign ran for 13 months. Had I just started campaigning when the deadline to register, deadline to get your name on the ballot, it would have been 10 months. But there was also a primary. I made it through the primary. There was 11 candidates. It went down to 6. I came in first. And then the 6 of us went on to the general, and I came in first again. It was a long time. It was a lot of work. I probably spent 20 hours a week on it. And then the job is part-time. The job is, all of us, even the mayor, are considered 20-hour-a-week employees of the city. Other energy around this question? Okay. Are there unique struggles being a woman? This one, I felt like I wanted to be taking the class with y'all because I feel like, I don't know, what's it mean to even be a woman? What are all these gender stereotypes in the first place? I'll say that my sense of being a woman is very contextualized in my family. So I have a 9-year-old, now 9, but was 7-year-old daughter, and I have a husband. And so it's a big sacrifice for our family. Like I'm out, like this is dinner time, and I'm not there. And like we signed up for that. But I have to have that conversation with my daughter a lot. not as much now. She kind of got the message, and early on we just talked about like things that are important to her that she worries about around town. She's very concerned about homeless folks and how just devastating it is for their lives, and how visible it is. And so that's when we talk about it, say like, babe, like if we want that to get better, like someone's gonna have to do something about it. And like, I wanna be part of doing something about that, but it takes sacrifice. Like you just don't, it takes sacrifice. And so if we all care about this as a family, we can't have perfect vacations all the time and family time every night and every weekend. Like we're gonna have to give. And so I think that she's got that. And so now I drag her along to events and she's into it. She doesn't technically have my last name, she has my husband's, but we'll be at events and she'll write my last name on her sticker. So I think she's kind of digging the vibe of it. But that, my sense of what it means to be a mother is where I've had the most personal struggle. In the arena though, outside of home into work, we're the second all-female city council Asheville's had. So there's 7 of us, including our mayor. We're all females. We identify as women. And I think that's pretty cool. So I think that there's some things that might come up in interpersonal dynamics when you have multiple genders that would be different that we might not. But then there's things that come up when you're in a group of all gender that brings up other things. So it's just kind of like a trade-off, right? So, and then I'll also say, what was my other note on that? I'm definitely mansplained all the time, which I find really irritating and frustrating. And people are like, well, you should do this. I'm like, actually, like, do you want to read my dissertation on this? I get really frustrated with that. But I think that's just a thing for a while. And maybe it'll be different for Ruby when my daughter's older. But for now, old white guys have bad habits. Other thing I'd say is Asheville's pretty rad. Like this could be really different if I was somewhere else. Like even when I was in City Hall as a young professional, I was pregnant. I've only ever, is this true? Yeah, I've only ever had female bosses. I've never reported to a man in my career. And when I was in City Hall, I was pregnant. I had really, really terrible sickness for like lots of puking for like half my pregnancy. And my boss brought a couch into my office from home and was like, take a nap and close the door anytime you need. So like, just a level set, right? So like, do other women have really different experiences in government? Sure, but Asheville is just really special. And so I feel like I stand on the shoulders of other women. And I see a bright future and I don't experience sexism. I don't know if I could point to sexism in my career here, which is pretty awesome. So those were kind of my scatter shot about kind of the struggle being an elected and what it means for my home and my personal life and the sacrifices, and then some of my experiences as it applies to actually being in service and in the job. But curious for y'all, like, I don't know, wherever this question came from, what's on your mind about what it means to be a female elected or a female politician, or what worries or insights or curiosities do you have around that question?
I feel like being a woman in power is something that a lot of people are scared of. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that people just don't want to see because they don't want to see, they just don't want to see women power. Which I mean that also does come from like some like where I'm from is very like Christian based and people don't like to see women in charge because it's the Bible, woman can't be over man. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's something that we can't get too smart because we keep all the women out. We understand that. Why do we not be in charge?
I'm not sure that still comes out. Maybe I just don't see it this much, but yeah. It's really crazy. You know, we want to get in the pulpit when we can in the pulpit.
Something better. It's like 2.5 hours over here, but it's still like.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like being on city council in Mount Airy versus in Asheville. Like, I don't know that I would have signed up for that there. I don't really know. I've been there, but I think that context matters a lot. I mean, I'm going to tell a story. So this isn't as much about that, but like we've been having hard conversations in Asheville about public safety. We're seeing an increase in violent crime downtown. We're seeing an increase in homeless folks who are not all criminals, but a lot of people have a lot of fear and are real scared. There's a lot of fear and scaredness. So we're having those conversations. I took some policy stance. Someone came to my house in the middle of the night while my family slept, smashed my windows, slashed my tires. Extremely screwed up, right? That's in Asheville. And what I was talking about was very moderate policy ideas around this. And so it's shaken me up. It's made me like, it's been a big, very, very, very hard thing that's very scary and very sad for democracy. And that's Asheville. So why I started to tell this story is like the context of where you're leading really, really matters. You know, for me, I think it's a waste of time to even argue about bike lanes. Every street should have them. I'm a bike commuter. But if I was in maybe Mount Airy, I would be so radically left on the continuum that it wouldn't be worth my time arguing with people who are never going to hear me, right? Whereas in Asheville, I'm a climate activist, Yankee, bisexual, and I'm moderate. You know, like, okay. So I think that's something too about politics and leadership and community service is like, where do you fit in this and what's your natural inclination, right? And I'm a bridge builder, I'm a incrementalist, I'm a collaborator, so I can be in a moderate seat and pull people together, but I'm moderate by Asheville standards. Where I grew up outside of Philadelphia, I'm very, very left. And so it wouldn't maybe have worked as well for me. So yeah, there's a bunch of thoughts. Yeah, it matters where you're giving service to. There were two other questions that I had that from y'all, and then we could just take other questions. Are there any politicians I admire? My mom. So my mom was really was a community college English teacher her whole career, and my mom. And when Trump won, she and my father were both really activated in a way that they had not been politically, and then she ended up running for office. She knew nothing about politics, had no idea how to raise money. It was just so fired up. And so she served in the Pennsylvania State House for 2 years. And to see I'd worked in government. I've been volunteering on campaigns since I was 18. I turned 18, I registered to vote, then I got my nose pierced. Like, this is a big part of me. Like, I'm in. And my mom, that's just not really been who she is. And to see her, I might get it, but like, that's pretty baller, you know, to be so, her odds were so slim, you know, she knew nothing. And she did it, she pulled it off, and she won, and she served. She didn't win her second term, but it worked, and it was great. So to see that like grit, determination, and like we were saying earlier, that idea of like to be running for Congress or you have to do all this, is true. My mom ended up having to raise across 2 campaigns, probably $750,000. My mom didn't even make a living wage, for Christ's sake, all right? So it's possible. So for sure her. And then the other politicians I think about are our current mayor, Esther Manheimer, and our current county commissioner, Brownie Newman. And a lot of that is because I find in Asheville, the vision of what we want to be isn't the hard part for us. If you're in a really politically divided community, I think that's the hard part, because people say, well, no, I think we should cut taxes and cut services, or, you know, the where are we going is hard. For here, we have a lot of progressive alignment that we want people to afford to live here. We want jobs that can allow people to be creative and contribute to the community. How we get stuff done here is the hard part. We have a Republican legislature that is currently mucking with a policy I've been working on for 9 months. We're trying to ban plastic bags, and they literally are sneaking it into the budget that they're voting on tomorrow to ban us from banning plastic bags. So how you get things done is super hard. So watching 2 experienced elected officials who have been in their leadership roles for multiple terms, whether I agree with them on every policy thing or not, they have learned a thing or two. So those are the 2 I really mentor under right now as a freshman, and really value. Then the last question was around what do I think about like how we should combat homelessness. I'm glad someone brought this up. This is a concern. This is hard. What I'd first say about this is I think it's really important for us to understand that why are we seeing an increase in homelessness, and who are our homeless folks? What are some of the characteristics? Why we're seeing so much homelessness is because we have seen systematic erosion of financial support from state and federal governments to support mental health and to have institutions to support people with mental health issues. So we see a lot of folks who have mental health instability on our streets because if you're sick, it can be hard to be stable enough to be in a home. We are seeing an opioid addiction crisis like we've never seen any addiction crisis before. Death from drug overdose is now the single highest cause of death in Americans, which is bonkers. If you look, that's like absolute bonkers. Like heart attacks, that's been steady for as long as we've been eating corn syrup. But like now, opioids. So that plays into a bunch of folks who are homeless are really struggling with cycles of addiction and the disease of addiction. And then you have insane housing prices. So there's plenty of other reasons, but I think understanding what's going on is part of it. So if we're going to address this, we're going to need more than just one little city, right? Because these problems are not caused by one city government, but it ends up on our sidewalk, right? The funnel of that misery ends up in our community. So things that we're doing in the city, we all subscribe to, and I believe in the Housing First policy method, which is saying that how are you going to get clean if you don't have a roof over your head? How are you going to get a job if you don't have a safe place to shower? How are you going to work on these things that are perpetuating some of the things that are keeping you in a homelessness cycle unless you have a safe place to live and sleep? And so just on Friday, a place called Compass Point Village opened up, which is 187 permanent supportive housing beds, which means that 187 people in our town who currently aren't sleeping are going to get their own place to sleep. It's a hotel conversion. So imagine a hotel room with a hot plate, and then there's a doctor's office on site, there's addiction treatment on site, there's wraparound services. So it's not just a bed, it's like a full-blown facility to provide all these services. So also Mission Health just opened up 87 new psychiatric beds, so like inpatient psychiatric facilities. So those are some of the things, those are long-term. I also think that while we work on these long-term systemic things, we also need to look at accountability for laws that we have on the books. And it's hard to say, I don't think police enforcement is the leading strategy. And when we're having conflicts with people downtown, when we're having issues of safety in our parks, we need to still follow the laws. And if the law says you can't walk around with a machete while you're intoxicated downtown, then we need to enforce that as well. So there's a real fragile line there. I think policing as an institution has a long way to go to keep improving, but so does education, so does hospitals, like they can all improve over time. So there's a little snippet of what I would say are the root causes that we need to be working towards, but we also need to be ensuring that as we have kind of a Venn diagram sometimes of criminal behavior and folks who are experiencing homelessness, we also need to make sure that the rest of the public is protected when there's some overlap there. Okay, yeah.
I have a question about
Yeah.
the Compass Point Village.
Yeah.
What's the barrier situation? Is it low barrier shelter? Is it
High
barrier?
So the barrier concept, there isn't like a technical term for it. So I would say it's a lower barrier.
Gotcha.
But like you don't need to be clean. You can be using drugs and still go there. You don't need to have an ID. They do not have any places for pets. They only have 4 family units, so that's a big barrier, right? If you're like, don't split me up with my partner. So those are technically barriers. They also have like part of the facility which is specifically going to be, I don't know what they would call it in homeless technical land, but not everybody of every gender feels safe around all other genders, especially when they've experienced violence in different mixed settings. And so there's like a specific part for folks who want to have additional safety and privacy. Yeah, it's great. It is. It's really great. It's not enough.
No,
It's completely necessary and 100% insufficient. But that's okay.
to start.
That's like, you just got to swallow that. If you're going to be a change maker, everything you do is necessary and insufficient. That's why you wake up and do it again the next day. Sorry, that's a little fatalistic, guys. Girls, folks, everybody. So those are kind of the questions that y'all had tossed out. Are there other questions or thoughts or things that is coming up for you and you're just pondering as we have this discussion?
I should say that you are so amazing. You're so passionate about it. It's really nice to hear. But as you're saying, like, the do-goodery.
Yeah.
I really understand that on the personal level. Ever since I was little, I was like, I need to do something good. And when I got in high school, I got really into biology. And I was thinking of studying abroad, but I didn't think it really like far into like I want to make some sort of change. And that's when I got into forensics. So I'm going to go into prison biology.
Very
and,
cool.
Like, DNA analysis, crime scenes, killers, all that, like getting bad people off the streets that need to not be out there. That's probably like it's just what I want, and I think it's we talk about like do-goodery, and I understand like the insufficient, like
And necessary.
It's necessary. Is it insufficient? Maybe, but it is trying, and it's stuff having to take towards being sufficient.
I can't wait to hear how it goes and what you do. You're going to pull off a lot of crazy stuff, I bet.
Well, you said gifts too, right? You use your gifts, you're passionate.
Yeah.
It's the sciences.
Yeah, my sister is a neuroscientist, and so I was like following her footsteps and like started in the chemistry track, worked in a lab here. You do not want me in a lab. And I'm glad I learned that early. I was like, that is not my talent, that is not my gift. That struggle is not how I'm going to help. Other questions or thoughts, or what else? Or what are you thinking about? What are you pondering upon?
Well, I think it's great that the place that opened has the ability to let people come that are using it still.
Yeah.
Because I'm in recovery. And no one
Yeah.
ever, because I never felt to the point, but I always worried about it.
Yeah.
Constant worry. And it's something that the reason I don't do politics is because I was raised in politics in Texas. And then coming here, I got involved in politics in the county a bit. Thought about running and realized that I was so far left.
Yeah.
There was no way. All I would do is make people mad and not make me mad. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear your story because it's so different than what I would have expected in almost any government. Because my experience with government has been so awesome.
Yeah. Nashville's pretty special.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad I ended up in Nashville, but
It all depends too, like, I don't know, like I wonder if my first real job had been at like an advocacy nonprofit, I could be on a whole other trajectory for sure. But I tried to get one of those jobs here and I couldn't get one. There's like I got one offer and it was like 10 hours a week for $8 an hour. I was like, I got loans. No, good job. But yeah, you can go in all these places, or like, had I not gone to school here and I didn't find myself with my gifts as that collaborator, being the moderate voice, this might not be a table I would have space to, because if I was too left, I would get too angry.
yeah, it's not great. But I mean, to have any kind of place with vets, especially 107,
huge.
To have
It's
that
not a hotel.
beds and to not have the barrier of you can't come in if you're not clean.
Yeah.
Or, well, you can't, yes, you
Yeah.
can't come in if you're not clean. Because it's just one day, I mean, not to mention like spaces that probably do because I did the pathways day.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to work it out for a while, and they were like, yeah, well, people can't come in with any issues and they get kicked out. Like at night, if they come in, they get kicked out. And well, how do you get out of that?
Yeah.
If you can't get out of that, you know, like people are human and they're going to make mistakes. So I think that is wonderful. I'm very glad to hear.
Yeah, there's a concept, someone who works at Homeward Bound told me of like slay the closest dragon. And basically they were saying like, oh yeah, if you're in addiction, you got a bunch of dragons mounting. It's not just that addiction. It's other things that addiction counts. It's other things that led you to that addiction, all this stuff. And when people are saying like, well, you should get clean, that dragon is like 15 dragons away.
Yeah.
You need somewhere to sleep. You need somewhere to go to the bathroom with a door that closes. Like, quite frankly, like if I was homeless, that's not the point. Slay the first dragon. And so in the Housing First model, it's like the first dragon is a safe place to sleep,
Yes.
a good rest. And then they have food and all this stuff. So yeah, we're very invested in the Housing First model. We just awarded last week $1.75 million to open up 43 more beds. Like now, like in a month or so, before we get into Code Purple, which is basically when it's 32 degrees below, we get access to a lot of federal money because it's an increased death risk. So we have a lot more shelters in the winter, honestly. But we just put more money to more beds. We're doing a lot of work on it. What I will say about the homelessness issue, though, is what I'm seeing in cities that have been struggling with the scale of issue that are a little further along than us, is that I think it's really important to like segment out strategies because everyone who's homeless doesn't have the same problem set. And so housing is definitely a big part of certain things. But mental health, drug addiction, a safe place to sleep, there's a lot of different things going on with different types of people. Also chronic homeless folks who have been cycling through or spending many, many times. That's really different than the people who tip over the edge and they had housing. If they had just quick rehousing services, they'd never be homeless again. But every month that a newly homeless stays homeless, their chances of cycling through increase, essentially. It's hard life. So I think that we need to look, so we've been investing lots of money in housing as the main strategy, but we need to double down on addiction and recovery treatment. We need to double down on mental health and like really take those separately. Our city has mostly focused in the Housing First model, and I think we need to look at others, but the county is doing a lot in the recovery side of things. Thanks for sharing that's part of your life. I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. It's like, this is just regular people.
Well, and
The part that, you know, I always had at least one job. I mean, at one point I had 6 jobs.
Yeah.
And I've always had real jobs too.
Yeah.
Like I would also wait tables at night or whatever, but I've always been in accounting. And so it's one of those things where everybody sees a person that fits into normal society life. They seem to be great. They're always working. Like, what's wrong? Why are they, you know, they're fine. They couldn't ever have a problem. And the whole time, like, I had no idea how good I was doing in the world because I wasn't doing good. And that's how much I think all people, most people, are actually not doing good in some form. And all it takes is a situation to where they're no longer doing good. That I've known so many people who have been homeless. And coming from Texas, I was in Houston and in Austin, and watching them do the cleanups. Like they just show up and they basically take everybody's stuff and kick them out of an area. And it's like, there was a family that had just become homeless, and all of their stuff was taken. The only stuff they had managed to keep, and they had just become homeless because of gentrification and housing prices among everything else. And it was like, there weren't resources at all there. So part of why I came here anyway was in North Carolina was because of the fact that even in Haywood, it was more progressive and strong,
Yeah.
much more progressive. And then, you know, quickly ended up here, which makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot worse than people think, and also a lot better in some ways.
Perfect, we have time.
Other, how do homeless people find out about these new places to stay? Like, how are you getting the word out?
So we have a bunch of different nonprofits and like government agencies that work on this challenge. And a lot of those programs include basically like street outreach. So I can think of probably 10 different people who their job is to just be in community, like know who, like know where all the pop-up campsites are, know where the free lunches are. And so it's less about like putting out a flyer, and it's more going to where we know people are and being like, hey, like here's a sign up day. And like Haywood Street Congregation downtown does big free meals on Wednesday and Sunday. And the community paramedics there, so if you need to see a doctor, and the mobile clinic is there if you need to do other stuff. So it's kind of going to where they are is what we found to be the most effective. And you know, there's some people who don't want it. That's a very small amount, but there are some people who don't want housing, and that's another segment that we have to figure out how to support them to live humanely and be safe. Yeah. Other questions on this topic or any of the other things around?
I have one about like voting and also the homeless population, because a portion of your like voter registration is if you're houseless and you like put where you stay. But now with the new voter ID laws, are there any like initiatives or like groups that are going to be working to like make sure that they have a valid form of ID that's like, you know, not expired and like up to date, so that they are able to? Because I know that it's like it's an important part of like being in a society, and I think like something that everybody should be able to have access to. But like now that they're kind of like more barriers from the state that just is like, you know, causing issues. But
yeah, that's a great question. This is a random chance where we're actually lucky in that having IDs is like a major barrier to getting out of homelessness, period. Because at just some point, you're gonna need to tell them your social or something. And so many homeless service provider organizations already have in their programming the pathway to like, okay, let's get you a social security number, and they know how to walk you through those government red tapes. And so there's a lot of that infrastructure already built. Now, will they expedite it for voting purposes? I don't know where that fits in priorities, but when folks in these, folks who are getting services from these nonprofits like are on that pathway, these nonprofits like know how to do this better than anybody else. So I think that they'll actually be pretty prepared. Whether there's a campaign to really say like your voice matters, you matter, care about this. I don't know. I don't know if anyone's doing that. But I think that's important. I mean, it's the same conversation with felons. Felons, like, how are we gonna learn? We all need to say. That's the bottom line. Is like this whole democracy thing doesn't work if we say everyone can say except you because I don't like that thing you did. Like that's not okay. That's not what we talked about when we started this whole thing. So yeah, I think that we have continued to have plenty of struggle from the state. That's a tale as old as time here in North Carolina, and that's part of what you sign up for if you're doing do-goodery here. You just got to understand that. We have like a minute left. Maybe you'll just indulge me in a closeout round of everyone just going and kind of saying a word from what's on your mind or where your heart is after this conversation. I'm going to go last. So why don't we start where we ended last time?
I just was thinking about a lot of the stuff you were saying about the homeless population, especially the really bad mental health resources, just because that's something we've been talking about recently. I'm in a psychology and law class, and we've been talking a lot about how police aren't trained enough to deal with homeless people or people with mental illnesses. And I think one of the things we compared was that I think for police in the state of North Carolina, minimum training hours to graduate is 620, and for to get your license as a barber, it's 1,593. So it's over double of what police officers have to get, and it's just sad to see it sometimes because like we would want our public defenders to have the most training possible, especially when we live somewhere that has a lot of, especially with like, because a drug crisis is a mental health crisis, it causes that kind of stuff. I mean, it's neuropsych, all of that kind of stuff. It's just sad that like we don't have a way to really help. It's sad, I guess. It's probably how I feel about it.
I'm trying to think of like what to say. I'm not the best with talking in front of
You
my
can skip too.
Yeah.
If
Do you mind if
I'm
do you mind if I skip? Please.
You can just say pass.
I just pass.
That's totally legal.
I'm just still thinking about homelessness as well, and I'm glad that there are some things that are being put in place to help. If nothing, that's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a brother who's like dealing with homelessness in Alaska, so it's really nice to hear about it. There's people out there that are, doing something about it to help those people because they really need it.
I feel optimistic. I don't know. I'm very much like a glass half full person, and especially meeting with like our local government. Like you said, you did the shuttle to the polls. Like I did that, and was just like meeting a bunch of people. And I never have had a bad experience in Asheville yet with doing voter registration or like shuttle like poll stuff. Like it's always been a very positive experience here. Nationwide, it might be a little different, but at least like citywide, like I have tons of optimism for like what Asheville can do. And I think that we've had a few bumps, but I think we do have like some really good people in office, and we should continue to elect good people as long as we vote.
I feel like I'm repeating everybody else with the homelessness stuff because I'm thinking
it on different notes.
Yeah.
Right?
It's okay. I'm just gonna pass it because everything's been covered.
I agree that I'm like feeling more optimistic. Like I feel like a lot of times like you hear about like all these different problems with like homelessness is a big one, but like you hear about so many problems within like cities, and like it kind of feels hopeless. Like you hear more about the bad news than people helping, so it's really nice to see that like you can help and you can make a change, even if it's locally. Like that's just a start to changing things elsewhere. So
Yeah, I guess kind of the same thing, but like just with politics, I feel like a lot of times people think that it's really like slimy and like the people in office are like not looking out for the better of the community a lot of the time. So yeah, it's just nice to recognize that, like, especially on a local level, that it is just like real people who are looking out for the community because they're in the community.
I think the last thing you said when you were talking about how people are very isolated as felons. So there's a big difference. It's like there's murder and then there's drug use. My brother, my oldest brother, he actually did the addict. He just got 13 years in prison for just drug paraphernalia and all that good stuff. And he's being taken away from his son. His son got taken away from him at a very early age. He got put back with his mom, and his mom refused a whole bunch of stuff. So I think it's just crazy to see when we have these felons, especially drug users, because they can't get better. He was trying to get clean before he couldn't see his son, and that really seemed before. So then they live in prison. So yeah.
I'm not going to jail our way out of this.
Yeah, there's really not like, there's bigger issues than drug use. There's just bigger issues than that. Than just like throw in prison per se. So you have to help them on a community level. It's not, we'll throw you in a cell and you're gonna fix your shit. It's not how it works. But yeah.
I think like I agree with what you're saying. You can prison reform. It's a very big thing that we need to deal with, but I think it's empowering whenever you look at things smaller and the change that's happening in communities, because mainly what we all look at with the news and everything is just the entire nation. We're like, we can't change anything. Sitting and looking at Congress just kind of sitting there arguing, but then when you go in with like a smaller lens and just look at the community, it's really empowering just seeing actual change happening. And I've been trying to think of questions for you, but we're in Asheville. It's an all-woman council. All of your bosses have been women. Not really any questions that I can come up with.
I figured it out. It's all done.
I feel really like empowered by your story about having such positive experiences in the workplace as a woman, and that just, we've had a lot of speakers in here that have talked about discrimination they face, stuff like that, and it's nice to hear that some people have better experiences.
I was stuck on a story about your mom running for office after Trump was elected. We had a similar experience in my town. More recently, it was my first time getting a vote. And we had someone, it was actually my mom's pet two runs. Run for the first time without knowing anything, they learned everything so fast. And they didn't win because my county, they wouldn't win. But it was our first time getting, I think, more than 40% of the county to vote Democratic. Wow. And they last time I think it was 25 or something. So I don't know, just normal people feeling inspired by things they see around them and deciding to do something about it. That's what I did.
I am still developing my feelings on government in general. So I was a little skeptical. But when you started talking, I really do appreciate all of the things that you are putting into place in this arena. I live and work on Haywood in West Asheville, because that's a big problem houselessness is. So I know a lot of the local houseless people, because they come in and I know them, and a lot of them are the sweetest people ever, and a lot of them are really scary. If I'm being honest, just the experience I've had with them have been really scary. So it's nice to hear that there will be some form of help that will be going out to those people if it's possible.
I am clearly excited about some of the things that you are doing, but I'm also really grateful for learning about the fact that after my experience in Haywood, I didn't really look into the government very much. I moved here in April of last year, and basically there was an election, and I crammed really quickly to see what are the best options that I can choose to help. And I was like, I don't know them helping. And I haven't really had a chance or felt like looking outside into the government here more because of past experiences. And I'm really glad that you came here so that I could learn about this. Because I'm really glad that we have white city council right now. I mean, there's only more than that, but still, yeah.
Well, I just look, can I cite you? My favorite note that I wrote down here was, the get real is where it's hard. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do every Thursday night here, aren't we? We're trying to drill down into the hard parts and figure out where we fit in that. So I'm just so grateful you said it that way.
Yeah, I'm glad that you came tonight.
Thanks for inviting me. Super fun. And if you find yourself in a path where you need to or want to intern, I don't really have I don't know what that means, but we would sit down and I'd buy you some coffee and you'd tell me what you care about, and we'd try and see if we could dock it into something where I need to collaborate with someone on. And we might not find anything, but we might. And that's how I started interning with Brandy Newman. So if that's appealing to you, Ellen has my contact information. That can be this year, that can be a future year. But seriously, reach out, or if you have a friend who knows it, there's nothing like getting started to learn where you are, where you want to go. So get started. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.
Yeah.